In the summer of 2012, the forests of Ridge Pine National Park stretched for miles beneath Idaho's endless blue sky, their shadows ancient and deep. It was the kind of pristine wilderness that inspired legends, even among seasoned locals. To Ethan Calloway, a boy of 12 who had rarely strayed far from the paved streets of his small hometown, it might as well have been another planet. The retreat was meant to be a week of adventure, new friends, and the sort of small, manageable challenges that help a shy child test his courage. What unfolded instead was a story that would haunt the sleepy town of Marion, and anyone who heard its whispered retelling. The first light of day broke through the tree branches as the youth group campers tumbled sleepily from their canvas tents. There was the hum of activity, laughter as oatmeal bubbled on camp stoves, the hiss and pop of a new fire, the clatter of tin mugs. For most of the kids, this was an ordinary morning in the woods. But for Ethan, every sound and movement was unfamiliar. He watched, absorbing, head always dipped, hands fidgeting in the pockets of his hoodie, the same faded green one he'd worn on the bus here. That morning, groups splintered off for various activities, a hike up to the rocky overlook, another to the bubbling creek. Ethan lingered near the edge of camp, his gaze drawn to the mystery of the forest. He approached his group leader, a friendly teenager, not much older than himself, and asked where he could go to the restroom. The answer was pointed, casual. Just past that copse of pines, about 100 yards out, you'll find some privacy. Stay within earshot, okay? Ethan nodded, reassured by the leader's easy tone. He set out along a faint track, watching each toe scuff the mossy ground. His mind wandered. He imagined monsters behind the thick curtain of trees, then shook his head, reminding himself he wasn't a baby anymore. The forest pressed close, the scent of pine and damp earth filling his nostrils, sunlight filtering down in splintered beams like searchlights. But out there, where the gleam of the tents and the clamor of his group had faded behind layers of green, something happened. Maybe it was a wrong turn around a fallen log, or the temptation to explore just a bit farther. Maybe it was the way the trees grew, identical and disorienting, muffling the sounds of camp. Whatever the reason, within minutes, Ethan no longer recognized anything. He looked back, searching for the path, but it was as though the forest had swallowed it whole. At first, he did what any sensible boy might. He stopped, listened for voices, retraced his steps. When that failed, he called out, his voice thin and uncertain, floating into the vast hush. No answer came, only the sigh of wind, the complaint of a distant jay. He turned in slow circles, straining for the glint of sunshine on tent fabric, the steady hum of life. Nothing. Minutes passed. Panic, cold and metallic, began to creep in. He tried to mark his way. A stick broken here, a stone kicked there. But in Ridge Pine, where every tree was a towering sentinel and the undergrowth a thick, impenetrable carpet, every direction looked the same. The hush deepened, interrupted only by the snap of twigs beneath his feet. Ethan was brave, but bravery has its limits. As the sun ascended and shadows deepened, a terrible realization dawned. He was lost. His bottle of water felt pitifully small, the 2 candies in his pocket, a meager feast. He imagined the headlines, "Boy lost in the pines." His heart hammered in his chest. He called out again, this time louder, with the ragged edge of fear. Back at camp, the first hours of Ethan's absence didn't rouse much worry. Kids can be slow, distracted, even mischievous. But as the sun climbed and breakfast passed into mid-morning, unease set in. Group leaders, at first confident and commanding, began to question one another. The first searches, shouting his name, scanning the brush, retracing all known footpaths, turned up nothing. Within hours, the rangers were called. The forest, once inviting, now pressed in menacingly. By afternoon, Ridge Pine buzzed with the coordinated efforts of human searchers, dogs, thermal drones, and even a helicopter slicing lazy arcs overhead. The air was alive with hope, desperation, and the unspoken terror that the forest would keep its secret. Ethan, insulated only by his threadbare hoodie and childish hope, faced the first night alone. Instinct told him some things: find shelter, stay dry. He wedged himself beneath a downed tree, knees to chest, arms wrapped tight against the creeping cold. Time stretched. Hours blinked by in shifting darkness. Coyotes called in the far distance. A fat-barreled owl watched silently from a low branch. Ethan's mind conjured up stories to keep fear at bay. Superheroes who braved worse odds, explorers with sharper wits. At one point, close to midnight, he thought he saw lights flicker through the trees. He waited, breath held, for the shouts of rescuers. But the lights melted away, as if they'd never existed. In that time, reality and fear blurred. Shrill winds mocked him from every direction. Hunger gnawed. He pressed both candies to his lips, letting one dissolve, savoring its sweetness. Thirst racked him. He rationed his water with a discipline beyond his years. When first light came, Ethan's limbs ached, stiff and clumsy. The forest around him had transformed, every shadow stark, every sound charged with unfamiliar intent. He stumbled forward, following no path at all, just the faint hope of rescue. Hours later, when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, he heard what he thought was salvation: the distant, thrumming chop of helicopter blades. Relief rushed through his veins. He scrambled up a shallow incline, flailing his arms skyward, voice cracked and raw from shouting. The helicopter hovered, impossible and massive above the swaying pines, but as quickly as it had arrived, it veered away, its searchlight tracing paths far from where he stood. Ethan crumpled to the earth, frustration and despair washing over him. Seconds ticked by, then minutes. As he tried to gather himself, a voice, the first human voice he'd heard in nearly a day, came gently from the gloom. "You shouldn't stay here." He whipped around. There, standing calm and still amid the gnarled roots and fallen needles, was a man clothed almost entirely in black. A heavy jacket zipped to his chin, pants practical and neat, a dark knit cap snug on a head of black hair. He carried no pack or gear. No sweat marred his face, no sign of anxiety or exhaustion. Ethan, too tired to summon fear or skepticism, stood slowly. The man's eyes were kind, observant. "I'm here to help," he said, voice a low comfort. Without another word, he pointed through the trees, beckoning for Ethan to follow. Ethan obeyed. Step for step, the man guided him, weaving through brambles, fording a shallow, icy creek, never moving too fast, always pausing for Ethan to catch up. The forest seemed different around the man, less hostile, almost welcoming. In the near distance, a patch of brightness appeared. Then the unmistakable outline of a tan park ranger's truck, parked awkwardly on a narrow service road. Ethan's heart leapt. They had come for him. As they approached the road, the man in black slowed. He turned to Ethan, his face suddenly unreadable. "You'll be safe now," he murmured. And, just like the glow of those midnight campfires, he vanished. Ethan blinked, bewildered. He called out. No answer. The space where the man had stood gaped empty, undisturbed. There were no footprints, no rustling underbrush, only the distant noise of an approaching engine. Moments later, the ranger found Ethan, radioing for immediate help. Paramedics bundled him in heavy blankets, hands steady and reassuring. He was alive, dazed, dehydrated, cold, but spared from true disaster. The return to camp was quiet. Ethan was enveloped by sobs and joyful cries, his friends and family clinging tighter than they ever had before. The questions came quickly. How had he survived overnight in the cold? How did he find his way out of terrain so disorienting that even the most experienced rangers sometimes lost their bearings? Ethan told his story, voice trembling but unwavering. The man in black, his quiet guidance, the silent reassurance. Search teams exchanged worried glances. Their logs for the operation were exhaustive and detailed. Who searched where and when, what was found, who was wearing what. There was no record of a man matching Ethan's description. None of the trained rescuers donned all black. None navigated those woods unprepared or without radio contact. The area, when scoured after Ethan's rescue, showed only a faint, lonely trail. Ethan's small footprints edging through mud and fallen leaves, but never side by side with another's. Even the dogs, noses eager, caught only traces of Ethan's scent. The more details Ethan offered, the deeper the mystery grew. His recollections never changed. His voice remained certain. The man, he said, walked with confidence, never hesitating, as if the thickest places in the forest had no secrets for him. And when he left, it was as though he had never been there at all. As the tale spread, speculations abounded. Some said the man must have been an unregistered hiker or some local expert avoiding attention. Yet no such person was ever found or came forward to accept thanks. Others whispered more improbable theories, a benevolent spirit, a woodland guardian, or, as one local paper put it, the man in black, an angel in the pines. Ethan's grandmother was the first to voice what many were thinking. In front of television cameras and skeptical neighbors, she declared, "God sent someone to lead my grandson home. Once he was safe, there was no reason for him to stay." For Ethan, the man in black remained real, unexplainable, but never frightening. When pressed, he only smiled. "I don't really know what he was," he'd reply, "but I wouldn't be here without him." To this day, the trails of Ridge Pine bear no plaque, no marker, just the murmurs of campers and locals, the warnings shared around gatherings and firesides. There are things in the woods we don't always understand, and sometimes, in the darkest moments, help comes from places we cannot see and may never explain. Ethan Calloway grew up as children do, but with a thoughtful distance, an air of wonder and humility that set him slightly apart. Those in Marion who remember the summer of 2012 will tell his story with a shiver and a glance over their shoulders to the green that presses just beyond their cozy homes. They speak, too, of the boy who vanished and was found, and the mysterious stranger in black, whose footsteps left no trace but in memory. Some mysteries remain unsolved, like footprints lost in pine needles. The tale of Ethan Calloway and the man in black is one of them, a story of fear, hope, and the thin edge between reality and the unknown. And maybe, just maybe, it reminds us that even in our loneliest moments, we are not truly alone.